Welcome to the CG Pro podcast. This is episode 84, and today we have Geoffrey Kater, who is creative director at S4 Studios. If you enjoy what you hear today, you can join us in another couple of weeks for another podcast. You can also join us again at the CG Pro webinar tonight at 5 p.m. We're going to be talking about all things AI in the visual field and others. So, yeah, today gives me great pleasure to welcome Geoffrey to the show. We
Great, thanks for
have,
having me.
yeah, you're very welcome. It's great to have you here. So, tell me a little bit about how you got into all of this in the first place. I mean, usually somebody's got a movie or something that gave them the idea at the beginning of their journey for why they wanted to get into this crazy industry that we're in. Was there anything like that for you?
Are you talking about the industry as a whole or just virtual production?
The industry as a whole, just going back to childhood, if you like, however far you wanna
Yeah,
go back. For me, it
yeah.
was I was 14 and I saw Jurassic Park,
Oh,
and
I see.
that lit me up and made me want to get into computer graphics and film. But
Yeah. Oh,
was
yeah.
there
Well,
something like that?
so I'm a kid of the 70s, grew up in the 70s, so Star Wars for sure. So when Star Wars came out, I was still a kid, but I was so blown away by this universe and the whole thing, and of course bought all the toys and that. So I would say that had probably the strongest influence over wanting to become an artist, you know. I didn't really think about the film industry at all back then, or even when I went to college, you know. Um, I'll skip ahead, but into college. But basically, I was really fascinated with industrial design and doing spaceships and cars and that kind of thing. And then I lived in Pasadena, and my mother called me one day and said, hey, there's a school nearby called Art Center, and they do futuristic cars and all this different stuff. And I drove up there that day and was just like, oh my God, I got to go to this school. So I essentially studied automotive design. I got accepted after, a while, et cetera, after high school. But yeah, I went there and, they had part of their track would allow us to do fantasy design um, classes where you could design spaceships and spaceports and all the Star Warsy type stuff. And like, all those amazing artists from Star Wars were totally my heroes, and a lot of us in the class. Um, but the track was less entertainment and more car focused. So near the end, I had kind of a couple semesters to go, and I met a guy. I was at a party or whatever. I met this guy, and he told me he worked for Marvel for Spider-Man, and I was like, wow, and he was a character designer, and so we started chatting, and I said, well, do you ever need anybody to draw cars for cartoons or whatever? And he said, yeah, they're called a prop designer, and I was like, holy crap! So he says, well, why don't you come up to Marvel and we'll meet with you and bring your portfolio. So I went to Marvel at that point. That was up in I want to say Van Nuys, up off of Sherman Way, I think. They had like so I had met Stan. I hadn't met Stan or any of those guys, and so I mean, well, actually, I met Stan later in my career. But so when I walked in, I didn't even know what I was walking into. I had never seen an animation studio, and I walk in and like the elevator doors open, and there's like a big Spider-Man, and a big lifelike Stan. Anyways, so they took me around from the department to department, and I was pretty blown away to see that they had compartmentalized things into, people who just did design, some people who did only inking, that's all they did, people who only did color, paint, that type of thing. So it was at that point that, and they handed me a storyboard and they said, go design, you know, this tank and that airplane and this and that and blah blah blah, and they gave me basics for that. And so I went home and I did that over the summer, um, and was mentored by a guy named Wayne over at Marvel. And at that point, I fell in love with the animation, the idea of working in animation. And then I got a call to work at Deke Entertainment on a show called Where on Earth Was Carmen San Diego. and they said, we've heard that you're kind of a Sid Mead type, even though I mean Sid Mead is a god, but they're like, we really need somebody who can design all these cool gadgets and stuff like that for her. And I couldn't draw a character to save my life, so I can only draw industrial things. It's really weird. But I went there, interviewed, got the job, and so worked at Deke Entertainment while I had a break from Art Center. And at some point, I got offered a job at Saban Entertainment, which was expanding and doing Power Rangers at that point, original programming with new cartoons. I got hired on some stupid little cartoon called Bureau of Alien Detectors. But again, it was like all like helicopters and cool planes that changed. And at that point, I just decided that I was too far in on a professional path, and I just um, never went back to Art Center. I said, I'm done, and that's
Oh
it.
wow. You
So
quit and
I
just
quit Art
followed.
Center. Yeah,
You were already there, so you didn't need the rest of it.
I was, and I mean, it was a dream come true. I mean, you know, I was making good money. I was driving a sports car to work every day, and I was drawing the coolest sci-fi stuff, on a daily basis. And that was just such a fun job, which lasted for many years. And then computer animation started to enter the scene, where computers and studios were starting to take in, um, you know, working it into a pipeline. It was already working in the film industry, but not in animation. So we worked on the show called Silver Surfer,
Cool.
and that's where we'd meet with Stan and team and go through the expectations of the show and really understanding. And the cool thing at that point was like, hey, a computer can actually, these really like Galactus, or these really complicated, or even Silver Surfer himself. We could model them in the style of the show, and we used Jack Kirby's style, which was style back the original comic books. Um, but we were able to really translate that style into animation, and it melded with the cartoon hand drawn aspect of it. So it was at that point that I started to get really into computers. And so I would design spaceships, on paper, and then I would actually start modeling them. So that's how I really got into modeling and then animation. And I animate fight scenes, and so kind of learned on the job that way. And that really got me to a point where I became more of a, we call it like an animation or visual effects professional. So
Right.
that's kind of that's how I got into film,
Got it.
via animation.
What was it that made you feel like it was so exciting that you wanted to quit school and just go all in? Was it a feeling? Was it like a particular aspect of it?
Yeah, it was. Look, designing cars is a very iterative, and I've since gone back and worked with the car companies, so I kind of see what I missed out on, which is actually not. It's a very dry kind of iterative process. Entertainment is a very exciting, story-driven process. I remember sitting in a meeting, and the director was like, "Oh, we have this scene with this character coming, blah blah blah, whatever it was," and I popped in and said, "But what if the car can do this? What if the trunk can open and this can happen and they can hide in the thing?" And they were like, "Yeah, that's a great idea. Get that." You know what I mean? Then it was like, "Oh shit!" Like I don't know if I can cuss, but I'm affecting.
Well, apparently you can now.
Yeah, sorry.
'Cause we're live.
Jackie's on the button. Beep. Um,
We can't beep quick enough.
yeah. So the ability to affect story with my designs and have influence over the look, not just the look, but the influence over the story, that got me super excited. So there's really just like this idea of, and also variety. Like even on a typical cartoon show, I would design 30 plus props, and I'd have to have those done in a week. So it was like mass research, figuring out, everywhere from an Apache helicopter all the way down to, a walking stick, or even a cup that somebody's drinking, anything a character would touch. So I liked that. I'd liked being, and then, then I'd go move from like a real hardcore sci-fi show to like a wacky cartoon where I was drawing like whacked out vehicles and strange things that fit the characters. And I like that idea of being able to move around to different styles as well, which I thought was really cool. And I learned so much from the people that work there. I mean, a lot of the artists came from comic books. Some of them came from animation. And I was one of the only people in the studio that could draw cars at the level that I could, or vehicles. So I was kind of the go-to car dude. I mean, if the show needed a Batman, let's say a Batmobile type car or something like that, then I would design that depending on the type of show. And it was from anywhere from like a realistic looking car to some, wacky car that a, superhero rabbit would drive. You know what I'm saying? So, it's just, it's fun. And animation was fun, you know, and it's a good group of people. I also like the idea that what we would draw is really what would end up on the screen. There's not a ton of interpretation. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Right. You're
So,
closer to, yeah, like being in comp or whatever. You're like the last person who's touched
yeah,
the frame, and you know that, so you get that sense of satisfaction.
yeah,
What
for
what was
sure.
it like as CG started to come in then? Did you like excited about that as well? Embraced it
Yeah.
quickly? What was it like?
Well, the program we were using at the time was called Lightwave.
Hmm.
And that was very popular because it was a modeler and an animation program and then a renderer all built into one. You did have the whole Maya alias track as well. That seemed to be more of a feature film thing, but I was working more in broadcast television. So we had quicker turnarounds, and Lightwave was a very popular program for a lot of studios. So basically, in Marvel went bankrupt. I don't know if you remember that, but I think it was like 98 or 99. They went through a whole bankruptcy thing, and Silver Surfer got pulled. So all the Marvel shows got pulled, and Saban scaled down and started laying people off. And at that point, um, uh, my old art director, Dale Hendrickson, came to me and said, "Hey man, I'm thinking about starting a studio. Are you interested? It's going to be computer animation. I've got some clients and this and that." And I said, "Hell yeah, let's go do it." So we got a little office over in Van Nuys, and we literally had two laptops and an empty office, but we had Lightwave. And so we started to get some projects through people. Phil Roman, from the famous Phil Roman, from Film Roman. Um, he had a job that we'd work on. I mean, he's a legend, animated on Peanuts and did all of the Simpsons and all that type of stuff. So, um,
So were you
y
doing kind of background stuff like the early CG that got into
well, we were
animated?
doing animated cartoons at that point. So
Right.
the evolution was eventually, as the company grew, we started doing more and more CG animation projects. So Cartoon Network, we did a whole special for them on some stuff, and then everything we were doing was computer animation based. But then we met our we had got another partner, and he came from trailers and that type of thing. He said, "Guys, like, what you're doing with the character stuff is great, but like, there's a whole world out there that needs flying titles, and you can do it for, trailers and movies, and we can do effects and all that." And that's when that whole side of things started. And I got really interested in all of that, really like getting into like explosions and, really cool, like photorealistic looking type shots and augmenting shots that were, already in the can. So, and in trailers, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on, like removing, guns from people's hands and cigarettes from their fingers and all kinds of stuff to make them so they can broadcast during certain hours of the day, for, just for kids. But that became then a core of our business, was actually more and more trailers, more, and then commercials, and then feature effects as the company grew over the years. Um, and then branding networks. We did 3 networks for NBC Universal. I mean, full packages, from all of the titles, all of the promo work, um, and we had a blue screen, like it was blue paper that we put in one of the big rooms, but we could shoot. We could bring somebody in, doing something, and then we could comp it that day and have it into a cool little promo shot with a guy standing in front of, text behind him and stuff. We did that type of thing all the time. That was over in Hollywood. We moved to Hollywood, and we were doing a lot of
Right.
that work, you know.
So sounds like were your skills becoming more generalist at that point, moving way beyond just drawing things, but into using cameras and doing compositing and
Yeah,
CG and all the things by this time.
definitely. And certainly After Effects became a big part of our studio for comping. And Cinema 4D started to kind of came out, and that was like, oh, cool, man, we can do animated text like way easier. So yeah, um, that was at that point. Sure, we were.
That's so cool. Yeah, well, it must have been a very exciting time for kind of being there around the invention of a lot of this stuff. You've been through the evolution of computer graphics as it was invented. Being in a part of the world I wanted to be in. I
Mm.
was in London dreaming of being in California where it was all going on.
Yeah, well,
So,
also, and I forgot to mention this, but when we started in '99, that's when the .com thing started to take off.
mm,
So all of a sudden, Flash, if you guys, people remember Flash animation.
I certainly do. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but that was like, holy, oh my God, we can actually do cartoons now and put them out on the web. And so, there's all these startups like Icebox and whatever, but we got contacted by Sony PlayStation, and they said, hey, we saw some of your Flash stuff on your website, and we're doing it. We have a game called Twisted Metal Black coming out, and or it exists, but I think it was was it? Oh, there was Twisted Metal, and then there was Twisted Metal Black, which was the new version. And they're like, we would love you for you to do these webisodes. Um, Featuring these characters outside of the game, so with a flash look, a cartoon flash look. So I directed like 6 of these crazy little horror shorts, and I worked with David Jaffe, he's pretty well known. He's done that. I don't know what other video games he has, but he's pretty much a legend. And we sat around and just like, okay, we're going to take the characters out of the game. What are we going to do with them? And that was kind of cool. So we did a lot of content for distribution just on the internet. So we learned a lot about Flash, and we learned a lot about, so those techniques actually influenced some of the other stuff that we were doing, you know? Um,
In what way?
well, it just gave us more versatility. So, you're not, let's say if I wanted to do traditional animation look, I wasn't stuck using Toon Boom or some other type of program that's a high-end program, or even hiring or outsourcing to another animation company that specializes in that stuff. It gave us more capabilities in-house to do other things. So,
Right.
I just think that that's kind of the core, like where I'm at now is because of the understanding of combining lots of different techniques and workflows to meet some kind of end, you know. Um,
Yeah.
but I gotta say, it wasn't easy either. I mean, I went through a lot of like near bankruptcies and ups and downs. I mean, the market crashed, and then NBC Universal sold their emerging networks to USA. Then they've lifted all that work that went away to the East Coast. Lost all my crew, had to scale down, move. Ended up at Mid Wilshire, and that's when the car thing popped in. I got a call from a buddy of mine who worked at Honda R&D down in Torrance, and he said, "Hey, man, all the motion graphics stuff that you guys do is like really exciting, but like we need some of that kind of pizzazz in our cars, and we have a division called the HMI division, Human Machine Interface division, that needs like we have good graphic designers and good people who know how to program everything and understand, but we need somebody to come in and just do some cool stuff." So I integrated with them. We were going down there. I had a couple of people worked for me. We were going down there probably 2 to 3 times a week to meet with the design team and go through, okay, we've got this whole new line of Acuras coming out. What's the user interface look like? What's the experience? So it got us more into UI, UX design, but we're trying to bring some kind of make it look really cool. Like when you start the car, if you jump in one of the new Acuras, especially the RDX, when you start the car, there's a startup animation with the logo that spins, and very like a trailer, right? So we did that, and then they approached me about, well, we do all these, we have new technology coming out, like a new car that doesn't exist, and rather than building the entire car, what we'd like to do is just like, can you put it on screen and make it look real? And it's like, yeah. So we did stuff like that, where we created little short films about people experience a vehicle that doesn't exist, and it was only completely for internal use. It was never to
Mm.
be seen by the public. And which was unfortunate because the stuff we were doing was incredible. We were doing car replacements, and we were on a track up north shooting different vehicles and replacing them with futuristic vehicles. And um, but yeah, that kept us busy for about 5 years.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Yeah,
It's
and
amazing
then
what's happening in that industry now as well, with the technology that's fueled virtual production for the last kind of 4 or 5 years is now in HMIs running
yeah,
real time rendering with Unreal Engine
that's right.
now on those screens too. It's
Yep.
kind of crazy, and the people are scoring cars. Like Hans Zimmer's doing a
Yeah.
car, and the guy was within India, A.R. Rahman is scoring a Mahindra. And like the production value that's going into vehicles now is like it's like a home theater almost.
Oh yeah, it's funny that you use the word theater because that was a word that they used all the time, which is called theatrics. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? They're like, okay, well, when you're approaching the car, it should know you're coming, and so its lights should go brrr, ding. Hey, when you open the door, it has a really cool like song that plays when you get in, or the whole HMI lights up and does something special well before you start the car. This idea that the car is actually doing something interactive and theatrical for you was a big push. So yeah, like using Unreal, I mean, the idea that you could actually change your experience of the HMI at any time you feel like it now versus it being pre-baked, that's pretty
Right.
cool.
It's a long way away from me crumpling myself up to get in my mum's Fiat Panda that I didn't fit in when I was learning to drive.
Yeah, yeah,
That would I thought would have been very comical to me at that point. But
yeah.
yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I mean, there are places, especially in this part of the world, where you spend a lot of time, and yeah,
Oh yeah, of
I get it.
course. Well, and say what you want about Tesla, they did change the entire landscape based on,
Yeah.
okay, they put a big iPad in the middle of the instrument panel, but it did get people to start thinking, and car companies start going like, whoa, okay, they just leveled everything up like big time. These car companies have relationships with all kinds of head unit makers like Alpine and da da da, and the GPS and all that stuff has to get baked in somehow. So they just can't like go to like, okay, now we've just got iPads, you know. So, but I have seen some of the new stuff, and I think it's pretty darn cool. Honda, of course, was always very, very concerned about safety. Safety number one. I mean, we couldn't use like red on user interface stuff for certain things because it means bad, danger.
Mm.
Um, and they were very cognizant of having the driver safety thing as being sort of the number one thing about anything we did. So it would always go through that filter. But it was a great experience. My gosh.
That's really
Um,
cool.
yeah.
Really cool you mentioned that as well, because I know the industry that we're in, it goes through ups and downs naturally, and we're certainly in the last few years experienced that in multiple ways. And I think it's great to hear of all the other stuff that you can do with computer graphics, and seeing your passion, your obvious enthusiasm for doing stuff that was in an adjacent industry but using the
Yeah.
same skill sets and was still very fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. I mean, that's definitely a good point. I mean, if you can figure out how to take, I would say even within the film industry, um, that if there's a way to take your core skill and somehow evolve that using new technology, um, I think that there's a way for you to evolve and continue success. Like I'll give you, for instance, uh, I was, looking at some AI generated stuff from some people, and some beautiful AI generated stuff. And this guy, he called himself a generative director. And I looked at that and I was like, have you heard of this? Generative director?
Well, I'm definitely seeing sort of the attempts at, like, I guess, job titles in the AI
Right,
space. What do
right.
you call yourself anymore? I've seen things similar to that, and generative AI artist, or yeah. Anyway, continue.
But yeah, but the idea, it's like, oh, I'm a generative director. I could totally see an agency going like, oh, well, we need to get that person because they're a director of AI. And so I was
Right.
talking with a friend of mine who's a DP, and I said, dude, generative DP, like, why not? They need somebody to light the shots, right? They
Yep.
need somebody to direct and light, that type of thing. So, I mean, your skill could translate to that once, and especially
Yeah.
as tools continue to evolve. To me, it's look, there's a lot to say about AI, but my experience with it currently is just an evolution of visual effects for me personally. I'm able to create shots much faster, way faster, um, but it still has my design aesthetic applied to it as much as I can get it in there.
Right.
But it is, I think if people look at it like, okay, how do I fit that in? I don't know what to say, but that's, I'm finding it interesting.
There's probably at least 8 podcasts worth of things that you could say about it, but it's
Yeah,
really interesting
sure.
to hear you saying it in that way. And I echo the sentiments: we still need artists behind the tool, no matter what the tool is. There's obviously lots of interesting discussion going on about AI and usage of it, and trying to understand how to use it, how are you allowed to use it. But in that, there are a lot of things to unpack for sure.
Hmm.
What you've expressed sounds to me like this is obviously very different than stuff we've had before, but in a sense, what you described in the evolution of your own career, going from drawing things to using CG to now using AI, how does it feel to you having there's a lot of people out there? I'll preface it with saying there's a lot of people out there, I think, excited about it. There's a lot of people out there who are scared of it, and um, you're seeming to embrace it and appreciate it for its capability. What um, what what is it doing for you, and what would you say to those who are kind of apprehensive about it?
I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush about it. In terms of, I would, I would, I would hate to be somebody right now studying graphic design in school. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Uh, I really feel sad that some of those young, talented people um, are being challenged by this thing. Like, let it's no different that when digital cameras kind of hit the scene. I remember all my DP friends, one friend in particular was just so like angry about this idea of like using a digital camera to shoot stuff and like film, and it's organic and it's, and I totally understood where he was coming from. And it also, because what started happening, well, everybody got a digital camera and started making movies. And so it wasn't any more about being a specialist in your industry. It was about people creating a new market using technology. And so there's a lot of people that have spent their entire career studying film and to be a filmmaker, and then you just have people on their, on their iPhone like, now I'm going to go make a movie, and they have like, they're making millions. There's a lot of that stuff that goes on. So you sort of have to figure out where you fit within the ecosystem, because I do think that there's enough opportunity out there for sure. But and we have now multiple markets that you can address for that. Um, but I would feel pretty intimidated if, so what I would do is, and I used to teach at Noman. So the students there were facing similar issues with technology even back then, and this is before AI. And the only thing I would tell them is just be yourself. Try to be the best you can be, because there's only one of you. And if you can create a unique point of view or perspective or style that you own, then people are willing to pay for that. You know what I mean? I only learned that because I was the car guy.
Right.
So niche yourself, I guess, is probably a good way to look at it. So like if I was young and looking at stuff, I'd say like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to use all these tools and do something that makes me and my approach unique.
So, what would you say or what would you do going back if you had to go back,
Hmm.
which you don't, but if you had to go back and do it again, but now, what would you do with all the insights that you have, knowing what's happening at the moment, all the things that you've already gone through? What would you focus on? What would you get good at if you're doing it now?
That's a tough question. I'd say I would say, okay, what I'm feeling right now about what I'm doing currently with virtual production is it's like a lot of all of these things we're talking about coming together. Animators and filmmakers, or visual effects people and filmmakers, and it's the center of it is production. And so I would probably just try to learn as many of those types of disciplines and approaches as possible, so you're well-rounded in what filmmaking is currently. I would say the people that work for me and I see on a daily basis all have some kind of a film background. They have a technological background that makes them unique to the production, and they all have a passion, obviously, for what we're doing. But there's definitely, I think, this understanding of filmmaking that some disciplines don't teach whatsoever. Like graphic design doesn't teach filmmaking, It doesn't teach anything about that. It's just such a foreign concept when you go to an art school and you hear about the people who are in the film department and they're running around with cameras and doing stuff. You're like, I have no idea how that works. So I would think if I could give any advice, it would probably be to somebody wanting to go in the industry is use film as your base and then learn all of these other things that can help influence your filmmaking process. So maybe I would go back and take that track instead. I don't know. That's a really interesting question I'll be thinking about later today. Because I don't want to
Well,
give bad advice and I don't want somebody to feel hopeless either. I think the more important thing is just do what you believe is important for you that fits your personality so that you're happy. So that you wake
yep.
up every day going, this is hard, but I want this. Um, you know, the and I know plenty of people, and that will help you get through the hard times.
Which have always been there, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you just expressed it in this interview, talking about the times that you've been through already, being through the 2008 or through the COVID or through the
Yeah.
.com era, which was when I graduated, trying to get a job as a programmer. There's always going to be difficult times and change,
Yeah.
and we're at one of those again. And
Yeah.
so what I heard you say was talking about the fundamentals, talking about the things that potentially are more timeless, the things which are underlying,
Mm-hmm.
and not focusing too much on the tool and the technology, but focusing on the practice, or the way of making the thing that you're making. Not necessarily the way with the tool, but the way that artists who are wielding the tools approach it,
Yeah.
filmmakers, if you like.
I'd say, like, if I had to simplify it, I'd say go study and become an artist first. Don't worry
Mm.
about all that technology is going to filter in through the school anyway. Just go concentrate on you. Then come shoot out of a cannon after college and go, if you're interested in production, go pursue production. If you're interested in animation, go pursue it. There'll be a place for you if you're passionate, because people who are running these companies like Pixar, they don't want, they're not going to let AI take over their entire their whole ecosystem. They're probably going to use it in some way, but at the end of the day, they're all about, their artists and their designers and their point of view and their style and all this stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it's, I think that's the best way to do. Just go be yourself, become a great at that thing that makes you unique, and someone will absolutely want to hire you because it shows focus. And then you're bringing something to the table that someone else can use to help their mission. And so I don't think that really has changed. It just
Right.
it's just new tools.
In terms of the
Hmm.
AI, what are some of the things that you're noticing that it's becoming good at, and what are some of the things it's not so good at?
It's obviously, I want a picture of, whatever your prompt is. picture of 2 deer in the middle of the forest, nature photograph of 2 deer in the forest, and then whammo, in 30 seconds you have 4 options. I think the positive of that is that, wow, that does look like a photograph of 2 deer, and I've got 4 cool options. And now I'm going to pursue this option and just, if I like it, and I'm going to add things to it, or, go in more for a close up, or I want more sunlight streaming through the trees, or whatever your deal is. There's those really positive bits in terms of customizing it and being able to like I will say this, okay, and I bring up the 2 deer because I'm working on a visual effects shot that includes 2 deer. Now, when we first last year, we actually were looking at the budget, and we're like, oh man, we're gonna have to do this deer. Like, oh,
I've only
okay,
got budget
who
for
are we
one
gonna
shot.
hire?
So
Okay, we're gonna have to get somebody to we got to get the deer model. We have to get a rigger. We got to get somebody to light it. Then we're gonna have all kinds of. Can we use Unreal? Can we do? You know what I mean? There's like, and then like I sat down for 4 hours yesterday and cranked out a shot that would have taken somebody 4 weeks. So that's positive, I guess, in the way that it helped me help the film I'm working on and help them because their budget just couldn't afford 2 deer in a forest. But it's kind of negative because all the people down the chain that could have benefited from working on it financially have been cut out. I also think the
I
negative
guess in
about,
that case, though, you were saying that it wouldn't have happened had it been down that budgetary route because they didn't have the budget to do it that way. So
maybe,
they
or they
wouldn't.
would have to move things around to make it happen if it was that
Okay.
important in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this also, I think, this can make directors or filmmakers kind of, and you know how Hollywood is, man. If they can figure out how to squeeze a dollar out of a penny, they will. And if they go, oh, great, that took you 4 hours instead of 4 weeks. Well, that's cool. Now we're just gonna triple the amount of shots, and we're gonna cut your budget in half.
Next time you've got 2 hours to make the same thing.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's really it's really weird. I mean, in one way it's like amazing because I'm blown away by it, but in another way I feel kind of guilty too. It's like, wow, dang, the realities of this, it's really obvious. So,
Tell us a bit about what you're up to right now. What are you? Where are you sitting? For starters, are you in an
well, I'm sitting
impressive
at a
looking
stage,
LED
our
wall?
stage here, and this is over in Burbank. That's an LED wall behind us, about 50 feet by 13 and a half feet. And so basically, uh, during the pandemic, I had an opportunity. I got approached about doing a virtual production, doing virtual production. Let's just keep it generic. So I teamed up with a company, and they paid me and my team to basically create a virtual production workflow. Mandalorian came out, the famous Lux motorcycle video came out, went down there, watched all those demos. So that, when I saw that, that's when I had that moment again where I went, oh my God, live, real time compositing. This is insane. This is so cool. But I could see the writing on the wall as a visual effects artist because I had a visual effects business. I said, gotta evolve into this. So then it became about cameras and tracking systems and lighting and learning how to work on a stage. And so I found a stage partner up in Canoga Park. It was a small stage. They had about a 25-foot wall. You guys have been there.
Yeah.
And I just was like, I've got to be able to get all this technology running with the camera, get all that part running, and then also be able to do what we do normally with visual effects, which is to asset creation and getting all the stuff up on the wall and doing all that other bit. So over the last, let's say, 3 years, I've been highly focused on doing virtual production, and that stage went away. We moved to another bigger stage. And over that time, of course, we started doing projects. We're doing music videos, and we were doing everything from Unreal Engine to like 2D plates, video plates, car process stuff, all of that. And this last studio that we were at, went out of business, and they're basically a stage partner. That's what I call them. Like my company's a virtual production company and they're my stage partner, but they went out of business and I just thought, man, I really need to just focus on the virtual production company aspect of the business and not throw all my eggs into one basket with one stage. So um, the concept that I've got now, and last year at some point we started working on expedition files for Discovery, and that became an absolute model for the way that we move forward in terms of just ruthless efficiency, in terms of backdrop, foreground, art department, actors, done, move it out, do the next one. And we have camera tracking and all that. We don't use Unreal Engine for it, which I still think Unreal is great and it's powerful, but in some cases it doesn't make any sense to have it as part of your production. And sometimes it makes complete sense to have it. But as far as this type of particular show, um, so we really honed our pipeline. It, and again, massive credit to the director and the DP of the show. Um, they understood the technology, and they really walked in with an open mind of how to use it. There wasn't a lot of times I'm educating. This is how you use this technology behind me. This is how you light for it. This is how you balance color. This is these types of things. And this team came in, man, and they're like tech savvy and totally were like, okay, tell us how this works so that we know what to do on our end. And that's what that became. And so all those learnings now I've brought forward to all of our clients. So basically, at the beginning of the year, we shifted and found a new studio partner here in Burbank called Brandon Studios, and it's a beautiful facility. Uh, it used to be called XRM. Some people know of it, but it's now Brandon Studios. And their focus is they do a lot of their own original content. So their focus is on doing their own shows and this type of thing. But they have an open window for us to bring in and do business. And so my deal with them is, I have clients, I bring in business. I've brought in now a season 2 of Expedition Files that'll be shooting here at the end of the month. I'm bringing a movie in over the summer. It's going to shoot for about 8 weeks, all virtual production. So our plate at this point is filled until February.
Yeah.
Mostly because I've been able to parlay this workflow concept of the 2D, 2.5D workflow to clients who normally would always come to me and be like, "Oh, we're thinking about using Unreal," and I'd be like, "Why?" I mean, I don't mean that in a arrogant way. I just tell me why you want to use it, because what you might be thinking, your assumption of how it would work with what you're trying to do. Maybe we could just get away with just a nice little photograph or still or whatever. So I'm helping the clients really understand more and more about how to utilize this workflow that we have that's really efficient, cost effective, it's fast. You can get a lot. We do about 25 shots a day if you do it right. We sometimes, and that's with Discovery. Now, again, this team is like top of the top, like super good at doing this, but we do 5, 6 locations in a single day. So this idea of making virtual production affordable and flexible, we've been able to figure that formula out for the type of work that we do. I'm not saying it's for big features. I'm not saying but I'm saying for the types of clients that we have, especially broadcast clients. They want to come in and shoot for 1 day, 2 days, depending. Like a commercial wants to come in, they want to load 75 people in here, and they want to be able to bang out an entire spot in 1 day, maybe 1 day of pre-light load in. But they want to get value for their money. They want to make bang for the buck, and that's really where I've focused, is educating my clients on what they can do, working with them creatively to make sure that we're going to give them as much bang for the buck as possible, and making sure that they have a great experience, and then they're going to want to continue to shoot with us. And that's what I'm having now, is I have directors coming back to me and saying, hey, I've got this idea. I want to go pitch it to an agency. I'm just running it past you real quick, blah, blah, blah. What do you think of this? And that's never happened before. So I do see that you do have um, a generation of directors and DPs, typically younger generation of directors and DPs who thoroughly embrace technology, who see the value in it, who see that our guidance, and basically I'm saying it used to be the director, the DP, now it's director, DP, virtual production supervisor, that we're all reliant on each other to make that final image work, and that there's a lot of back and forth and respect there and collaboration, and that's really exciting, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah. What are some what's the excitement from the filmmakers? What are they excited about?
the versatility of the tools, so the ability to do live visual effects that they can see happening, and they can basically light it and color it live. And I mean, being able to go to locations they would never have access to, or moments in time, on Discovery Channel, or sorry, on Expedition, we do, in the morning we're in the 1800s, and you have extras running around and they're all in the proper, wardrobe and everything like that. And then, they zip out, and then now we're in the 60s and we're on top of a cool building looking out at Chicago. And so it gives like insane flexibility. But the idea of lighting your shot to look the way you want it on the day, and then that goes in the can, and then you can start editing it. And that's really also the most powerful part of it. Live, it's not just the live art direction, it's a finished product
Right.
for some of these folks.
So
Music
like
videos,
getting it done. They have a
yeah.
deadline, it's done, they can move on, but also you're saying that they love the fact that they can ideate in the space as well as a bit. Obviously they've got to plan a lot, but they can change things which before they wouldn't have been able to.
Change little things. I mean, I've seen like demos where it's like, well, you can move the sun from here to here. I mean, we don't ever do that. I mean, it's like we
Yeah.
already know where the sun's going to be. It's just that it's this like color. Like I wanted to, and also, there is, when you go through the traditional compositing route, a lot of directors, especially if they're shooting on green screen and stuff, they never get to see really how that's going until they start to get dailies back. And then it's like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. Here, it's just even as simple as changing color or brightness, or, these types of things. And, the music video folks love them some ICVFX, I'll tell you, because they're shooting it on the day, everybody's high-fiving, yeah, this is the way we want it to look, and then bam, they're editing their music video the following day.
Right.
So but there's a lot of pre-production and planning that goes into it, so don't get me wrong. But I have been on set where we bring up a shot that they thought, and every art department's already put in everything, and everybody's looking at it, and the producers are kind of looking at the screen, and they're just like, yeah, I don't know, and it's like, okay, hold on a second, go on their computer and maybe give us another image, or sometimes generate a new image based on a prompt, and then we can just throw it up on the wall in 2 minutes. It's like, boom, it's up there. And everybody's like, okay, yeah, that's working better. So there is an aspect of the iteration part that you're talking about that we could do that you could never have done before.
Right. Do you think that there'll be more of that over time?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. 100%.
Well, some of the people in the crowd are sort of echoing in the audience, are echoing some of the things you said, going back to the comments about Flash. Just to put it out there, we're still live, so feel free to ask questions. Somebody asked a question: is it possible to come and visit?
Yes, it is possible.
Cool.
Depends on, we like to make sure that all you have to do is go to our website, s4studios.com, and under, I think it's the contact page, uh, just email me. It's at icvfx@s4studios.com, and I can arrange a tour for you, and depending on your likes or needs or whatever you need. So, I mean, we do it definitely, we do educational events here as well. So if we wanted to get like a small group of people who are interested in the industry that just wanted to come in, we just have them kind of all coming together. If you're a director, a DP, or a filmmaker, and you really want to look for a spot, or even just talk about the technology, how it could work into your film, we can arrange a scout for that. So I can make sure I have all the right people here and everything up on the wall.
Very cool. Well, looking forward to being back again. We were there previously, but it's a cool space. So
Yeah,
I'm excited for you on that.
yeah.
What 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 do you see as being the important things for people to focus on at this point? Again, sort of again an educational question, but obviously I run a school, so my questions are probably going to bias towards that sometimes. But we're predominantly seeing not just new people wanting to break into the industry. A lot of what CG Pro the school has done over the last 4 or 5 years of helping people to understand virtual production coming from visual effects or from production or brand new to the whole thing, um, and now helping people to understand the evolution of that through the AI advances, through yes, still Unreal Engine and some other things as well. What do you think that it's important for people to focus on right now?
I would say I would say if you're a visual effects supervisor, and you have experience as a visual effects supervisor, you can become a virtual production supervisor. I'm pretty certain of that. I mean, personality depending,
Yeah.
but if you understand visual effects, you will understand virtual production. You need to understand a little bit more of the camera side and then the tech that makes it all work. But if you can get the training like what you guys offer, I think that you've got a real opportunity to become a virtual production supervisor. And frankly, there are a lot of shows that they will actually hire a virtual production supervisor well before they pick an LED stage. So there's quite an opportunity there to be sort of on the front line. And different LED stage layouts do different things. Curves are very different than straight long walls. It all just depends on your strategy of what you're trying to accomplish. So yes, VFX supers, that's big for me. You also have the ability in real time, if you're looking at something on, to say, we'll paint that out later. We'll, that's not working. Let's flip the wall green. We'll do a comp later. You have a you have a lot to bring to the table. And so, like I said, that's one area. Um, I know that you guys had a course for producers, correct?
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
that's another aspect that really needs to be, you know, I'd like to get to talk about, because producers and their budgeting is always has been based on that older model before virtual production. And so it's really important to kind of evolve your budgeting strategy to be more virtual production friendly, and you actually see the inherent cost savings that come along with that. But also, you can you can then really truly have, and if you're working with an agency or whoever, you really truly do have an understanding of the process. And what happens is I will deal with producers sometimes who've never shot virtual production, and we spend most of the time trying to get them to understand why we don't need this or why we don't need that. It's not negative against them. It's just that Movie Magic and some of these other different types of software, some of these, they're not, and I'm sure that they've evolved, but I'm just saying that if you're a producer or a UPM or a production manager, whatever, there is a future for you in virtual production, 100%, because there's more and more virtual productions happening. This is my big hope for LA, honestly. My big hope is that, you know, virtual production, the idea that it's affordable, it might even be cost savings, but that you can live in LA, but you can be in Paris in the morning, you know, and by the Nile River at night or by the pyramids at night, and then you can go home. I think that's pretty darn cool. And all the LED stages are different, like I said, but there are certainly opportunities within virtual production that I can see, um, globally even. So,
And another one from the, I guess, the art perspective, the content that we're putting onto the walls, or it's often green screens or even emerging technologies that are pointing towards a future of no LED wall or green screen. That the content still behind you or in front of you still remains something that people make with a combination of things currently. starting to become more AI, but still people are making things somewhat the traditional way as well, depending on the output. On the art side, what do you think it's important to focus on?
I think I think it's so important for you to have a fundamental understanding of color and composition, just those two things, and value. So value, black to white. Those two things are all three of those are storytelling components. So because your shot looks all bitchin' that you did, and wherever you framed it, that might be cool and all, but the real true masters of film storytelling use movement, composition, color, lighting, all of it to to get a response from the audience, an emotional response to what they're viewing. And these are techniques that are tried and true, been around forever. You have to understand why those decisions were made. When you watch a Scorsese film or a Spielberg or you name the director that you like, every shot from every angle has been decided. We are going to do it this way because it's going to create that moment. And that's what I'd say that you really need to get yourself to understand is it's not just about cool whatever lighting and
Cool
some
stuff.
thing. It's about
Yeah.
telling the story.
I 100% agree. I think I feel that through the evolution of the tool sets into this AI era, the same thing counts. The same thing matters. Like you were talking about the AI DP idea, where what are you talking about there? You're still talking about composition, lighting, the framing of your shot, the movement, all of those things which the focus, all of those things which tell that story. The um, the
And
fundamentals.
also writing. I mean, if you're interested in storytelling, study that, become a writer, learn how to write stories that are compelling. I mean, there are a lot of stories. What's the new cat movie that's out? The one with the little cat, the animated cat.
Oh,
What's it
Flow,
called? Flow. Yeah, Flow.
the Oscar movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like Flow, like what is that? Like the cat, like they purposely did the animation, like the CG and stuff is very simplistic. It's not like there's not like real grooming with hair and all that stuff you'd expect. But like the story is like really deep and like has moments of, you're all over the place. That's great storytelling. And that's great composition. That's great everything. So really, as it always comes back to great story, period. No matter the technique you use. Like you said, that LED wall behind me might go away, but how do we use the new tool to do a cool story? It's all going to be about that storytelling and that vision. So the technology is always going to evolve. You got to think about that. And like I like the way you started this off by saying, essentially, where do I start? I say start being yourself with your own personal style and niche, and you'll be just fine.
Learn those fundamentals. Well,
Absolutely.
it's been a total pleasure getting to share some time with you on the podcast, Jeffrey.
Thanks.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with the audience about what you're doing? Any places people can find you?
Well,
Any
you
where
can
they can follow
definitely
you?
find us on the website, but one of my new, and I would like stages to contact me if they would like. One of my new initiatives is I've teamed up with an LED supplier, and we're going to old sound stages in LA and taking a look at their facility, their power, their parking, these types of things. And if they have just did green screen for years, you might have we might be able to partner up to bring an LED wall into your facility and help you level up. And that's one of I think, my biggest pushes right now. So looking
Very
to,
cool.
help people evolve, essentially.
I love the fact that parking is on the same level as power
100%
in that
parking,
conversation in
parking
this part of the
power.
world.
Yeah,
Parking first, and then
parking
if you're some
first.
power,
Yeah,
okay, it's going to help.
parking. Yeah, exactly. So, well,
It's
thanks,
funny.
Ed. I appreciate it.
You bet.
I love you and Jackie. You guys are great. You've done a lot to support me, and whatever we can do to help you, we're always there for you.
I appreciate that too. Yeah, we're same goes both ways. We're all in this together, and we've chosen this place to dwell, I guess, with particularly around the educational side of things. And you were just much of what you were describing today was about education too. So I know we're cut
Yeah.
from the same cloth there, because with the really significant evolution of processes comes a lot of education, self-education, and then learning from other people who have gone there before you is always the quicker and better way of doing it. From my perspective, I'm always looking to make friends with people and get new
Hmm.
mentors who are doing things that I don't understand yet.
Yeah. And it is still the Wild West out there with virtual production. I mean, the combination of tools and software, everything, the hardware that we use is vastly different than the next studio over. And so there's opportunities there for engineers. You're a young engineer, you want to come in and you want to be able to start putting all this really cool stuff together. This is the time.
Well, I look forward to more experiments that we can do together, and
Yeah,
to
for sure.
creating events and bringing people together, and it's all about community. And I appreciate all the
Absolutely.
things you're doing
Thank
for
you.
the community.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you. Let's do it. Let's do it again.
We will. We got
Uh,
more stuff to talk about.
That for sure. There's a lot more, especially in the new frontier of all the AI, which I know you guys are experimenting with a lot. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And like I
Thank you.
said, people just reach out and look, it doesn't matter who you are. I'm all about mentorship and helping people out. So you just email me and I'll be happy to spend some time helping you or working with you, depending, no matter what stage of the game you're in.
Well, I appreciate it, Jeffrey.
Yep.
Thank you for
Thank
offering
you.
that. And thank you also to everybody in the audience who was here today. Thanks for being a part of the show. Um, we'll be back again in another couple of weeks with another podcast. We'll be back at 5 p.m. today with a webinar that's focused on AI. I'm running this one. We'll be doing some education around AI. So if you're new to it, curious about it, I studied it back in 1998, and my last job before this company
Mm,
was an AI company, a race car championship of all things. But I got a few things to say about that subject. If you want to come tune in and learn about that, then join us at 5 o'clock today. We will also be releasing a new course in AI, which is all about the pre-production side of things. That's the first one that we've got coming out. That's available right now if anybody wants to sign up and come and join us on one of our CG Pro adventures, but focused on AI this time. And I'm sure there's more announcements I should make, but I'm going to leave it there. Thanks again, Jeffrey.
thank you.
Thanks again to our audience and Jackie, and hope you're all doing well out there. Stay safe, make some cool art, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care, everybody.